Alrighty then. Welcome back. It is Sunday, the 12th, 1/2th, the 10-2nd, no, the 10/2th, the 12th of June on 2022 now. Damn. I keep in my head thinking that like the 90s, whenever people mention the 90s, I think that was like a couple of years ago, but that was actually quite a number of years. Commie Hunter, wow, hello. Are you the same, Commie Hunter? Because right now you're talking to me on YouTube, not on Instagram. Interesting. Anyway, welcome to the SitRep for today. It's Sunday, starting a little bit later so people could have a bit of a sleep in. That's, I'm generous and nice like that. I do things for you. You should appreciate this. No, I'm not doing it for you. I just felt like starting it later today. Okay, so number of stories that are going on, and I'm not going to smash too much out this morning. It's going to be a pretty, well, kind of lightish. Taking, we sometimes sit around 20 to 20, probably 6-7 stories that I've got actually lined up to talk about. Not always on different subjects, but that's usually the amount of articles that I'm looking at. Today, I've got like 10 or something. So we're at half speed today. You can take it easy. Because I don't want people thinking the world is all doom and gloom. I was looking through my particular YouTube algorithm, and it was just like, the end is nigh. This is it. This is the one thing. The crash is coming. Hell. I saw the word hell in at least 3 different tiles. So there's a lot of doom and gloom out there, and I want to tell you, people who are watching me, that I don't believe doom and gloom is coming necessarily. I think there will be hard times coming, yes, but the purpose of why I get on here and talk is actually to hopefully, I guess, inspire or encourage people to be prepared, so that it isn't doom and gloom, it isn't hell. Sometimes you need to use those words in order to get people motivated enough. I get that, but if you're coming to this from a place of fear, like total fear, absolute, like, everything is fear, then you're just not in the right spot. You're not in the right headspace. So I want to talk a little bit about headspace this morning, and thinking about that the goal that I want people to actually achieve here with preparedness is to take fear, to take like all over fear, and convert it into confidence. So that I'm not walking around the world thinking like, oh my God, anything can go wrong at any time. There is a part of my brain that is doing that. And I think that is a normal part of a human's brain to be doing that we were actually built to do that. We evolved to look at our environment and go, something could eat me, something could stab me, something could attack me. And so there's a part of our brain that's actually working in that way, that's looking out constantly for us. However, we don't need to just fall into that part and go like everything is bad. We need to say, hey, part of my brain, you there, you're doing a real good job. Keep it up. Keep doing what you're doing. And then we need to actually empower ourselves with the ability to do something about that. Because fearing about something and just having no action from that fear is useless. That's what actually exacerbates fear. So if we can have the fear, because fear is very, very useful for a human being, but then use that fear to motivate us to learn more, to equip ourselves more, to be physically more capable, then we start to convert some of that fear into confidence. I hope that kind of makes sense today. Question, do you know how to access your own trust? Are you talking about the trust within myself in my own abilities, or are you talking about like a bank trust, financial sort of thing? Commie Hunter, his employee. Okay, cool. He's got employees. That's interesting. So Jonathan Stratus. That wasn't actually that hard to read at all. I don't know why I was struggling with that. Question, do you know how to access your own trust? I can't see if you actually replied to that or not. Do you know how to access your own trust? This is what I'm talking about. The more that you can start to build up your own knowledge base, your own skill base, and rely on that more than outside sources. So we're starting to build up the intrinsic locus of trust as opposed to the extrinsic locus of trust, which we have in our modern day right now. We trust everything on the outside. We trust that the electric company will continue turning the lights on here. Speaking of which, let me light up your life, light up my face so you can see this a little better. Commie Hunter, you're joking. I thought you might be. So yeah, we put our trust and our faith in the government to continue to look after us, in companies to continue to look after us, without the kind of realization that ultimately, even though the idea is that organizations like the government are built to support the human beings within that nation, ultimately they are self-serving organizations. That's what they have become nowadays in the modern era. They're self-serving. If pushed far enough, they will show their true colors, and they are ultimately self-serving organizations, which means that the individual human within that organization, under the umbrella of the government, doesn't necessarily get looked after. So you will not necessarily get looked after. Yet we continue to put our faith and our trust in them. The prime example of this, I would say, is monetary policy right now. Our governments have been printing money, which means that it devalues the cash that you have. I have some cash in the bank right now, and because of what the government has done, they are devaluing that cash. Now, I had faith. This is a rhetorical sort of dialogue here, or monologue, but I have faith that the government will look after the money, and I have faith in this idea that this little piece of plastic, or this number on a computer screen, is worth something because the government is there and the government backs it, and the government is the foundation, the bedrock of our nation. However, they have been and this isn't conspiracy or anything. This is actual, like, you could go and talk to an economist right now and they'll tell you they have been systemically devaluing that dollar. They have been systemically devaluing the worth of those dollars for a number of years now. On top of that, the other part of this equation that goes into it is that the faith in the government. Now, the government has been systemically lying for a number of years now too. Probably much more so in the last 2 to 3 years. So we've had this erosion now of the faith of that, and so for us to continually put our faith and our trust into extrinsic forces or in extrinsic organizations, I think is just foolish. If you continue to do it at this point, then shame on you. As George W. Bush once famously said, "Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame. Fool me. You can't fool me twice. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me." Is the actual saying. So it's almost at the point where it's your own fault if you're putting your faith now in extrinsic forces in the government. Then it is really on you. It is time for us to take that trust back, to start building our own skills and to start testing them. So you build trust by trying something out. You try something. I go out into the bush. I try making fire by friction. I fail. So I go home. I research it more. I watch YouTube videos. I talk to friends who can do it. I go and practice it. I practice it. Then I go out bush and I do it, and it works. And then I go, right, now I know how to do that. And I continue to practice that. And so that starts to build faith. So that's just one little micro example, right? But for an example, starting fire by yourself, survival by yourself, hunting, skinning an animal, eating the food that you grew, all this sort of stuff starts to, little bit by little bit, build trust in you that you're like, oh yeah, hang on, built within this system here, in this bag of goo with sticks in it, is hundreds of thousands of years of survival technology. We've been doing it for hundreds of thousands of years, and that's without electricity. That's without governments. That's without any of this sort of stuff. It's without petrol, it's without cars, it's without planes, it's without cool merino wool t-shirts. It's without all this sort of stuff. So we can do it. We do have that stuff. All that stuff is sitting there within you right now. We just have to like try and find that switch again and turn it back on. So yeah, we can build trust within ourselves. Anyway, end of rant. Let's talk about some stuff, some news and stuff and things. All right, so I just want to touch on this story again because I talked about this yesterday. The Venezuelan president going to Iran. Well, they have now signed a deal. I said that he's probably going to go there and sign a deal, and they did exactly that. So Maduro has signed a deal with Razi, I think his last name is, his Iranian counterpart, and it is apparently a 20-year cooperation deal. These two nations, just so you know why this is happening, these two nations are the two most sanctioned nations on earth. I think maybe Russia might be going number one with a bullet, but previous to Russia doing what it did, Iran, Venezuela, two most sanctioned nations on the earth. This whole Russian sanction thing has now squeezed a big player into this sanction zone, and all the sanction zone people are starting to play ball with each other now, and that's what this is. No details on what that deal encompasses, but 20-year deal has apparently been signed. Ocean Kisses, I'm going to try growing a vegetable garden for the first time. Awesome. Thank you very much. I love hearing that sort of stuff. Love it when people are giving it a crack, because that's all it takes is just giving it a crack. Get out there, get your hands dirty. In fact, I was watching a video that one of the people I follow on YouTube, Canadian Prepper, Nate from Canadian Prepper, go and check out his channel. It's really good. One of the best prepping channels as far as I'm concerned. He just put out a video on gardening. So he had a chat to, I think the woman's tag is Canadian Gardener or something like that. But, really interesting stuff, really good stuff. He's got a number of videos actually around gardening. But I mean, there's a whole heap of videos out there on gardening, but that was just one that's prepping and gardening both in one. Definitely recommend going checking out that, but I couldn't recommend it enough. Gardening is a skill that we will all need in the future. And there is no downside as far as I'm concerned. There is zero downside to gardening. If you learn to garden and the world continues getting great and the economy's turned around and everyone shakes hand and everything's perfect and there's rainbows and unicorn farts everywhere, then you learning to gardening is still an awesome skill and you'll still enjoy it. I guarantee it. You'll still get something out of it. It is fruitful in more ways than one. That's not just a pun. It is a fruitful activity. So get in the garden. And if things turn to shit, then you know how to grow food. So thank you very much, Ocean Kisses, keeping it strong there, doing the good stuff. Let's talk about food now. Why a few more reasons, as if you needed any more reasons as to why you would garden. Here's some more I'm going to hit you with from Taiwan News. So I got this sent this story from one of my sources. Abnormal weather dampens millet harvest in East Taiwan. So Taiwan looks like the weather effects are affecting food supply there. This one is from one of the Queensland newspapers, I think. $12 iceberg lettuce. Whew. A head of iceberg lettuce, which for anyone, I have also studied nutrition in my life. And for anyone who's studied nutrition, you know that iceberg lettuce it ranks very low on the nutrition scale of the type of lettuces that you could have. It's essentially just sort of like green, crunchy water. Not that that's bad, but it's got some stuff in it, but just not as much as a lot of the other lettuces. But the fact that it's $12 for one of those lettuce, that's pretty damning sign. This is Australia too, kids. Like I said, things are happening fast here. So what's this going to mean? I think there's one more food one I had somewhere around here. Oh, this is a big one for food. Sriracha hot sauce. If you're a fan of sriracha hot sauce, like I am, the Hoi Fong company, which is that sort of red bottle. It's got a little rooster on it and all this like Chinese characters around it. I assume they're Chinese. I'm not really sure, actually. That particular company is saying, look, they're going to have some massive shortages, as in possibly not going to be able to produce any because, why? A chronic shortage in chili peppers in the US at the moment. So this company is actually a US company, California, I think. Yeah, California-based. But they basically are not getting, because of those drought conditions, they're not getting any chili peppers out of California, New Mexico, or Mexico. And so without the chilies, they're not going to be able to make the chili sauce. So we're going to have to eat our noodles now bland. No chili sauce for us. It sucks. Take this ride. This is the most intelligent Aussie I have ever listened to. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I think maybe you haven't heard a lot of Aussies, though. There are a lot of less than intelligent Aussies out there. I will say that. However, I would say there are a lot more intelligent Aussies than I out and about there. But thank you. I will take the compliment. I'm notoriously bad at taking compliments, so I will make sure that I will take this one. That's it. Sorry, I have to sort of lean in and look down if I want to read the Instagram messages. All right, so food shortages are one thing we can't eat. Cost of living is going up as far as food is concerned. However, some of those other knock-on effects that I often talk about are riots. And if you've ever listened to me before, I'm quite concerned about civil unrest and things like that. It does have big effects, and it has larger effects on society than I think we give them credit. But it's also a symptom. When we see civil unrest, it's a symptom of something that is not quite right within a society. Now, what a lot of people, I think, don't realize, we have the Arab Spring. If you'll cast your mind back, I think it was like 10 years ago now, Arab Spring, the uprising that happened in a number of countries at the same time, and people touted it as like a win for democracy. Look at them, they're overthrowing their evil overlords there. Well, if you actually dig down into it, what preceded the Arab Spring was drought and food shortage. So they were not getting access to their staples, i.e. bread, within the Middle East. And like that, the people started rising up. So, and I've said this quite a bit, we're going to see, or we are starting to see, shortages in staples. So we will see increased riot or civil unrest behavior. Arab News overnight, and this is another story that was sent to me, so thank you very much to the person, you know who you are, who sent this to me. Probably my main source, I would say, my main contact. UN envoy warns of civil unrest in Iraq as anger grows over food, jobs, and water. All right, they're three pretty important things. People can't work, can't earn money, but even if they can earn money, if they can't buy food, that's pretty bad. Hungry people, hungry families to feed, and water, that's a pretty big deal. All right, that's, in my view, orders of magnitude more of a big deal than the other two, but all combined does not spell or does not portend for a very peaceful, happy future. What we're looking at here is a lot of problems throughout the Middle East, and I believe throughout Africa, especially Northern Africa. We're going to start to see a lot more issues, and we will start to see this in the West as well. We're already seeing isolated things happen within certain countries within Europe. Obviously, we're seeing it within the US, and we'll continue to see it within the US. I don't know about Australia. I don't know what our propensity is actually for civil unrest on a mass scale, but we have proved over the last 2 years that there is an element who are willing to get out there and have their voices heard and even act in a violent manner if provoked enough. Now, if provoked enough is a big thing to say, because what happens when we don't have food? If you're like me, my initial sort of thought is like, okay, yeah, I really like food and it would make me stressed out. But I know I have personally been without food for days on end before, several times in my life. I've done it in testing, just in the military, going through certain tests, in the military, not going through certain tests, but just being caught out, overseas. and in things like Vision Quest and stuff like that. So I know I can do this. I'm also like, every now and then like to fast and do stuff like that. I know I can do it, right? However, if my family couldn't eat, then I would start to do some pretty desperate things. And I would argue that any person on the face of the earth, any normal Australian, would not stand by idly for 1, 2, 3 days watching their children starve. They would do something about that, and that something would be pretty extreme. So, I always like to say that civilization is only kind of 9 meals away from collapse, and in reality, I think it's 3 meals away, 24 hours away from collapse. You take food out of the mouths for people for 3 meals in a row for 24 hours, and you will get a pretty dramatic effect. So be warned. Whoa, lots of stuff coming up here. Fresh from Take the Ride on YouTube. Fresh drinking water will become the #1 commodity. I agree, and I've actually thought this for probably about 10 years at least, like very seriously, after reading a book called Climate Wars by Gwyn Dwyer. A little bit hard to get your hands on it now, but really interesting book. This guy was is a bit of an expert when it comes to conflict and ecological effects. So he works in think tanks and things like that. He wrote this book, and it's a really interestingly written book where he goes, this could be a problem. Here's one effect of climate change that could be a problem, and here's how it's a problem. And then the sort of part 2 of the chapter is like a novel, like a little story about how people would actually live with that. Because it's one thing to read information like this and go like, well, this would happen, rising tides would affect the water levels in certain island nations and they would have to move inland or move to other countries. Okay, yep, what's that mean? Or, rising sea levels would affect Bangladesh people, which means they'd have to move. Okay, you can read that and just go, cool, and let it go. Whereas if you actually read a story about somebody in that situation, even if it's a fictional story, you can actually start to picture what you would do in that situation, what is actually going to play out like on the land. So cool book, and I recommend, if you can find it, go dig that up. But that really switched me on to like, water. This is a big deal, a real big deal. You cannot grow food without water. Take the ride, that's correct. They've tried to put smart meters on people's wells in Texas, and ranchers have been out with guns saying, no way, Jose. They could turn off people's well water from an office. Can't let that happen. Absolutely. Water, as far as I'm concerned, beyond, we often talk about human rights and things like that, and there's a whole heap of things that come out from human rights advocates and people, and it gets kind of a little bit extrinsic to me at some points. I'm like, okay, is that really a human right, or is that just a right that we've come to see? Is that really a comfort that we've come to see as a right now within our modern society? Water is a human right. Okay, the access to clean drinking water is a human right, and this is something that I certainly would fight for. So if like Take the Ride is saying here that people in Texas, ranchers, are out with guns, I don't want to like advocate violence or anything, but that is a human right that I think we should defend. Absolutely, 100%. And I would be willing to stand by any person that was going to have their water taken off them. Of course, there's a whole heap of confounding factors within that as well that we need to think about, but just basic drinking water, people's ability to survive and people's ability to grow their own food, that is absolutely something that we need to do. Kieran, we brawl over a lack of toilet paper. Yeah. I'm actually up in Australia's largest city at the moment working this week, and every time I come here, I'm just more and more stupefied by just how people move around, how they act, what they do, how they think. It terrifies me, actually, thinking about this mass of people, 4-point-something million people in this city, that would basically be useless and would turn on each other in any sort of emergency. It kind of terrifies me, and it's things like that, like people fighting in Woolies over toilet paper. I mean, toilet paper's a cool thing, and I do stockpile toilet paper. It's not the most important thing in the world to me. It's not the most important thing on the list, but it is something that I think about. But the fact that people, fought over it in the great toilet paper wars of 2020 is something that we all need to sort of look at and not just laugh at, although it is kind of funny. Not just go, "Oh, look at those idiots, look at those people." We need to actually critically look at this sort of stuff and go, what is the fundamental psychology that's going on here in a human being? What are these people lacking? These people are living, like I was saying at the start, in fear. They're in fear and they don't know what to do. They want to control something, and the thing they can control is wiping their own butts. So they're jumping in on that. That's the thing I can control here. All right. And it's false control. So that's not going to alleviate fear. What's going to alleviate fear is that if we can grow our own food, if we can trust in ourselves to actually be reliant, that we self-reliant human beings, that we can survive on our own backs, that we as an individual, we as a family, that we as a community can pull together and actually do the things that we need to do to survive. That converting the fear mindset into confidence mindset. This is why everyone should get out of the cities while they can. I do not disagree with you in any way, Kieran. I do not disagree with you. I think these cities are, well, let me put it this way. I have had 2 decades now of working in and around war zones, disaster zones, shitty places in the world, dangerous places, all this sort of stuff, on and off for 2 decades. And I see a lot of things. Bad things happen in the world. I've seen earthquakes, I've seen floods, I've seen fires, like had my hands in them, experienced them, fought against them. I've seen wars, I've seen conflict zones, I've seen high crime areas, I've seen collapsed civilizations, I've seen economic collapses. All these things are bad in of themselves, but all of these things have another effect, which is always much worse: the human factor. Human factor in any disaster is always worse than the disaster itself. All right, there is an asterisk on that. That always, it's almost always worse than the disaster itself. It's the humans. So if the human factor is a problem, more humans equals more problems. More human, more problems. Okay, so if you're in a place that is high density human beings, then you're in a place that is high threat if something goes wrong. That's as simple as it is, as far as I'm concerned. So if you can get out of the city, do it. Do it. Start moving out to rural locations. Start looking out for more community-based places. Wow, you guys are really talkative today. I'm trying to keep up. It was great. Keep it coming. I love it. If you own the mineral rights on that property, you own the water that's underneath that ground. You paid for that well to have access to it. You shouldn't be mowing grass. You should use any dirt you have to grow your own food. This is all from Take the Ride, and I assume Take the Ride, you are in the US. Off memory, this is tweaking something in my memory about water rights in Australia. I'm not sure if you actually have water rights if you own the land above it in Australia. I need to check that, though. That's a really interesting one, and we actually need to look into that. And again, Take the Ride, they hoarded toilet paper while there was rolls of cotton and polyester material in stores. How soon we forgot that people used to wash diapers. Yes, exactly. There are a number of ways that we can actually clean our butts, and toilet paper is just one relatively inefficient way. But like I like to say, that stuff is out there right now. We have access to it. If you want to, you can go and get a little bit of it now, while it's there, while you're not sort of like hoarding it or taking it out of other people's hands or fighting for it in the supermarkets. And that goes for everything. So food especially, don't go in and clear shelves off. Just do things like copy canning. So going in, buying a bit more, seeing stuff that's on sale, seeing surplus stuff and going, yep, I'll take a 24 pack of those cans, whatever it is. This is the sort of stuff that we want to start thinking about. And one thing I recommend to people is just think about, if you shut your front door and didn't leave your front door right now because of an emergency, how long could you actually survive within your own house? Is it 3 days? Because that's pretty good. You're probably doing better than 90% of human beings out there. Is it 3 weeks? That's awesome. That's really, really good. That's getting up there. That's like the silver standard, I reckon. Is it 3 months? Three to maybe 6 months. Now we're looking at gold standard sort of stuff for food storage. The next step we need to be thinking about is regeneration of food stores or of energy stores. So water storage, food storage, energy storage, whatever it is, that we can regenerate that. So do we have a regenerative power system like solar? Do we have regenerative water system like wells, like groundwater, dams, rainwater capturing systems? And then do we have a food regenerative system? Can we go out and hunt? Are we growing our own food? Blah, blah, blah. So that's where we should be like really thinking. And when it comes to toilet paper, people aren't regenerating toilet paper. It's a one-way street with that particular device. So start to think outside the box. What can we do that's not doing that? Maybe can we set up like bidet systems? Maybe can we just wash butts a bit better, or can we use other products? Maybe start to research what sort of leaves and things like that you could use. There are some, me having spent a little bit of time out in the wilderness, through both personal research and internet research, have found a number of leaves that work quite well for doing that particular task. All family chiropractic, loving where I live more and more, and water isn't our right in Australia if underground. That's what I thought. So thanks for chucking that in there. Yeah, I remember reading something about that and just being like, oh, are you serious? What? Is there anything we can own in Australia, really? Is there anything we can actually secure? There was some talk, and I don't know if this ended up coming through, but I remember this around the Great Bushfires of 2019, where they were talking about groundwater dams and them actually being logged. So if you started to create dams that of a certain size, then they could come in and say that dam is actually like the government would basically register that and would take control of it in some way, would say that's not technically your water. All right, even if you built it yourself, it was just filled with rainwater, but that's not your water. I don't know what ended up happening with that. So again, I need to look more into the water sort of stuff. It's probably a little bit of a blind spot to me because I've got a number of systems now for water where I feel quite secure within water, but it's something that I really need to start looking into. So if anyone else has information more on that, please let me know. Even send me messages on it. We'll start a chat about it, and we can start to like really expand that. And I can maybe do a video just on water in Australia, because we've got very little fresh water in Australia. All right. Blue Ridge Mountain, Carolinas, USA. Come join me. I'll tell you what, next time we get over to the States, I just saw that the States might be dropping the negative testing, COVID test, to come into the country. I haven't been able to travel for an amount of time because of choices that I've made, but things are starting to open up now, and US is a place that I love going to. I used to go there once a year to visit and help train some kiddies in Colorado. But I would love that. Next time I get over there, I'll definitely come over. We can hang out, have a chat. I don't know if you're into beer or whiskey or whatever, but we can drink water at the very least. A set of wheels is the only thing they can't take for you if it's paid for. Van life. Yeah, I think you're right. Mobility platforms are a super important thing. Thanks for bringing that up, Kieran. Farmers have been told to not make dams or bore water pumps right here in Australia. That's what happens when you live in a country that grew out of a penal colony, right? It writes as something that it's kind of like a bit of a joke here in Australia. People used to use pine cones and plant leaves and water to wash. They didn't have toilet paper. They survived. Yeah. I mean, my dad, who he's passed now, but he was very old. He was born in the 30s. He'd talk about a whole heap of other ways that we could utilize, that they used to utilize back in those days. He was in a family of 11 too, back in sort of Depression, wartime Australia. So it was very interesting. Like I learned a lot from my old man, and things like toilet paper. How it's a modern convenience that we have. There's always another way. Newspapers was a huge thing for ages. Like as kids, you'd talk about how they just sit there and cut up newspapers and put them in the dunny out the back. Newspapers are, I don't know, are they still a thing? Can I wipe it with my tablet? I don't recommend doing that if anyone's wondering. All right, back on with the stories. This one caught my eye. Facebook has begun a new fact-checking campaign focusing on memes and posts related to the economy, inflation, and gas prices. And this one caught my eye because I've seen it a lot. You see a little meme and it says down the bottom, missing context. It's missing context. I'm like, oh, what context is this missing? Click through on the link. And you click through on the link and it actually starts talking about how this is out of context and here's some data and here's some other opinions. Like they actually put up their opinions and call it facts. I'm like, hey, that's an opinion that you're telling me here. This is not a fact. Fact checker, go check your own facts. But it's interesting, like, and I find it amusing that it's this meme doesn't have context. It's like, oh yeah, you're right. It doesn't have context. We should give this context. This meme is incorrect in the context that the government is right all the time, and what they're doing with money policy is 100% correct. If you use that context, so if you live in a crazy world filled with bullshit, if that's your context, then this meme is wrong. It's missing that context. But if you live in sane land, if you live in the rational land, if you live in a land where a relatively educated human being can actually read facts that are actually coming out and look at statistical data and go, okay, here's where we are, then that meme makes total sense. And that meme is actually correct. So look out for that, gang. That little missing context in red writing too is like, oh, this is wrong. It's not. I mean, I'm not saying it is wrong or right, but like, it's not necessarily wrong. Need to choose to live somewhere that you can collect your own rainwater for drinking in gardening. Number one priority from Take the Ride Again. Absolutely right. I agree. You really need to think about this, collecting rainwater. I've got a number of systems that I use on my current place, which is a rental property, but I'll be moving into my own house and that will have built-in 25,000 litre water tank, and I'll probably upgrade that with another maybe 6,000 to 9,000 litres. The property that I'm in actually oddly has a well in it that I can draw from. And obviously then there's town water as well, but I don't drink the town water because it's quite hard in my town. But yeah, you need to think about this. There are some places that actually put restrictions on rainwater. There are some parts of Australia which made it illegal for a time to collect rainwater, saying that the rainwater was filtering through things like bat poo and certain leaves that made it toxic for human beings to consume. To which I say to any government that wants to say you cannot collect the rainwater, go fuck yourself. I will continue to do that, and I would rather take some horrific disease from a bat, my chances with that, than my chances with not drinking water or drinking municipal water. But that's my personal stance on it. You draw your own line. I think rainwater's fine, and if you're worried about it, filter it, boil it. This is not rocket science. Like I said, this is basic survival stuff, and it's stuff that we've done for hundreds of thousands of years. And all of a sudden, a government comes along and thinks that they can do it better than that system. Right. Cool. All right, what else we got? More inflation data. I don't want to talk about that. More shortages. I don't want to talk about that. We all know about it. Oh, here's a story that I wanted to get to. In Michigan, in the US of A, this story has come out from one of the counties called Isabella County from Michigan, has explained that it must limit in-person responses to 911 calls. Why? Why would you do that? Is there too many of them? No. It's after its officers have already burned through their annual gas budget months before it's reset. Ugh. That's not good. That's not good for anyone. Okay, so I get that fuel's going up in price. I get that people have budgets and cities have budgets. But if we start to look at this from a holistic standpoint, again, I'll just bring it back down to this. If you rely on your government for certain things about your survival, like them always giving you food, like them always giving you access to water, like them securing your own individual human being person, then you're going to be sorely mistaken. And this is the sort of thing where you don't want to be sorely mistaken. You don't want to be sitting there going, there's a guy with a ghost mask and a large knife in my house who's trying to kill me. 911, please. Can you get someone out here? And them going, look, we could, but could you meet us at the gas station with a credit card? Because we're on empty and we can't afford anymore. This is someone's life that could be on the line. Well, probably is on the line if they're calling for a 911 call out, or 000, obviously here in Australia. But here in the States, they're calling for a 911 call out and they can't afford the gas to get out there, as in Americans use the word gas for petrol. They can't afford the petrol to get out there. This is just mind-blowing to me. And I just wonder, I don't want to look at this, but I just wonder if I opened up the Isabella County, Michigan spreadsheet for where they're spending their budget and on what money is going to, where I could find a little bit of wiggle room in things that might maybe not be so necessary, because this is somebody's life that is on the line potentially. So, but again, what does this teach us when we read this sort of stuff? Can we rely on the government? Can we rely on somebody else to secure ourselves? No, we can't. So this is one of the reasons why I recommend to people to learn self-defense as much as possible in whatever way you can, in whatever form you can. And of course, we can't be armed citizens in Australia and defend ourselves with a gun. You can't do that, so don't. Damned if we do, damned if we don't. What's in the water due to what they spray in the skies? Yeah, I mean, there's always badness in the water. But, there are ways of filtering and cleaning water. And they'll probably start invoicing people for their services. And Kieran, the government's spending our tax as well. Too funny. Too funny indeed. Need to get out of Australia, says Take the Ride. Maybe. But where to go? It's going to get worse there, and you know it. I do. I like the part of Australia that I live in, though. Australia is a relatively homogenized country. We're very similar from south to north to east to west. We vary by degrees, and that's quite often, quite literally, degrees centigrade, as in Celsius. So the hotter it is, the people change a little bit. The colder it is, people are a bit different. But I think the big difference in Australia comes between, like you would imagine in most countries, between rural folk and city folk. And that's where the big disparity, I think, actually lies. Rural folk, I would say, on the whole, generally speaking, this is a generalization, are much more functional human beings, as in they can do more. They're much more capable human beings. That's my personal perspective on it. As such, to give you an example, my rural town that I was in, when the horrific fires of 2019 came ripping through, and they were a day away, they were less than 24 hours away from hitting the small village that I was living in. The fire captain came down and said, hey, I've just talked to all the big bosses for the rural fire service, the volunteer fire service, and they said the fire will hit us within 24 hours. They also said, you have nothing. We can give you nothing. There are no resources. There is nobody coming to help you. So he called a town meeting and he told us all this. He said, there's nobody coming to help you. You will get no air assets. You will get no extra engines. You will get no extra personnel. There is nothing that we can give you right now because there is so much else going on in Australia right now. So we didn't just collapse. We didn't just pack up our homes and go, that's it, we're out of here. I mean, some people did pack up their homes and get out of there, which is fine. But as a town, we pulled together, and every person that could got up and did something. So people like myself who had utes, we put a 1,000-litre water tank on that back of that ute, and we put a water pump on that, and we drove around and we helped out and we put out fires. For almost 60 days in a row, we did this. People who didn't have that would support us. We had HQ elements, we had people on radios, we had people making food, we had people distributing food, we had people looking after other people and doing welfare checks and making sure that people were okay, making sure that people were fed, people slept, all this sort of stuff. We pulled together as a town and we did what we had to do to survive. And our town did survive in that. Very interesting. If you want to look at a documentary on this, one of my friends has made a bit of a doco on it. I'll actually put a link to it up there because he's changed the title of it once or twice. I'm trying to think what it's called now. Town Under Fire. I'm pretty sure it's called Town Under Fire. His name's Matt, or Community Under Fire. That's what it's called, Community Under Fire. And I recommend having a look at that because it kind of shows how people can actually pull together in an emergency. I have zero faith that people in the city would actually do this, but I have a lot of faith in Australians doing this sort of stuff when they live rurally or when they live in a community sense. It doesn't really matter if you live in a city or in a rural town or in the outback. If you live in a community sense, then I have full faith that people can pull together because I've seen it happen. But yeah, a lot of Australians, I think, could hurt if things get pretty bad. Rural folk are the spotlight for herding into cities. Yeah, we need to fight against that. We need to fight against that tendency for sure. All right, this was much longer. I thought I'd get on and just sort of talk for about 10 minutes and that would be it. I don't know how long I've been talking for, but it feels like a long time. 47 minutes, 48 minutes, wow. Well, I'm going to wrap it up there. Unexpectedly long and unexpectedly philosophical today, I think. But great chats. I really liked it. Loved all the questions. Thank you for... Take the ride for all your input, and I would love to have more of a chat with you about the state of play over in the States to know what's going on exactly over there. But thanks for jumping in and all your comments today. Thanks to Kieran. Thanks to Virgin Jen. Thanks to Hannah. Thanks to Lalia. Thanks to who else we got in here? I know there was someone else. All Family Chiropractic, again, Fruit of the Spirit. It's the same old gang, isn't it? Ocean Kisses, good on you. Keep gardening. Thanks to everyone for joining me today. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate the comments. Really appreciate all the messages that you guys send through. Let's keep building this community. Let's keep pumping each other up. Let's keep moving forward because we're going to need to do this stuff in the future. Again, I'm not here to fill you full of fear, only just enough fear to motivate you to start doing the stuff. So, thanks again. Keep prepping, everyone. Keep your eyes open out there. Keep your head on a swivel. And as always, Semper Paratus.